My sister moved in, had an affair with my husband, then tried to help him take my daughter in court. I exposed everything and made sure they both lost. I've been married to my husband Daniel 36 for almost 9 years. We have a 7-year-old daughter, Emma, who is basically my entire world. Daniel and I weren't perfect, but I genuinely believed we were happy. Or at least, content. We worked through things. We didn't scream, we talked. We had date nights. We shared responsibilities. You know, all the boxes you check when you're trying to build a decent life. Then there's my sister, Rachel, 31F. She's always been a little chaotic, the fun one of the two of us. Growing up, she got into trouble, dated questionable guys, and somehow still came out of everything looking like a shining star. She's gorgeous, charming, magnetic in that way people either adore or instantly distrust. I loved her, but I also knew who she was. Rachel moved back to our hometown about a year ago after her latest breakup. She'd been living in Miami and said the city had drained her soul. She had nowhere to go, so of course I offered her our guest room. It was supposed to be temporary while she got back on her feet. I didn't even ask Daniel, I just told him, and he agreed, albeit a little reluctantly. He's always been a bit guarded around her, but I chalked that up to her unpredictable energy. First it was fine. Emma adored having her cool Auntie Ratch around. Rachel helped with dinners, cleaned up, and even did school pickups. She and Daniel seemed to get along better than I expected. Too well in hindsight. Then came the night everything changed. It was a Friday. I remember it too vividly. I'd just gotten home late from work, I manage events at a hotel, and the house smelled like garlic and wine. Rachel had cooked pasta, and Daniel was already pouring her another glass of red while they laughed at something on his phone. Emma was upstairs, thankfully. It was harmless, right? Adults bonding over dinner and wine. But something felt off. The kind of off you can't name but feel like a stone in your gut. I joined them, and the moment I sat down, Rachel got quieter. Like I just walked in on something I wasn't supposed to see. They didn't look guilty. Just interrupted. Over the next week, I started noticing small things. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Rachel brushing past Daniel too closely. Daniel texting and smiling, then quickly turning off his screen when I got near. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was tired. That living with someone disrupts the dynamic. That they were just becoming friends. But then came the text. I was using Rachel's iPad to look up a recipe for a potluck at Emma's school. It was synced with her iPhone. As I was searching, a message popped up. Daniel, I can't stop thinking about last night. Your skin still tastes like red wine. Froze. For a moment, I truly thought I'd misread it. That it had to be some kind of joke. Clicked the thread. There were dozens of messages. Flirty, dirty, intimate. Photos, voice notes, and dates. Some sent from the same nights Rachel had said she was going to yoga or drinks with high school friends. I felt like I left my body. Everything just collapsed. I didn't confront them right away. I closed the iPad, went to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub trying not to scream. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even hold my phone to call anyone. That night, I slept in Emma's room. Neither of them seemed to notice or care. Now I had a choice. Explode and destroy everything immediately, or gather myself and figure out my next move. And I knew something else too. This wasn't just about my husband cheating. It was about my sister, the person who I shared a childhood with, who I stood up for all my life, who I invited into my home, into my family. She didn't just betray me. She invaded my life and claimed what was mine. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else and made Emma breakfast like everything was normal. Smiled. I braided her hair. I packed her lunch. Meanwhile, my insides were rotting with fury. Daniel came downstairs, kissed my cheek and said, "Thanks for letting me sleep in." I fought every cell in my body not to slap him. Rachel came down 30 minutes later in one of my old t-shirts. The one I used to wear on beach trips with Daniel. I watched her pour herself coffee like she owned the kitchen. Like she belonged. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I told Daniel that I had a last-minute conference coming up and would be out of town for a few days. Total lie. I just needed time. Alone, away, space to think without breaking in front of Emma. He barely blinked, just said, "Oh, you sure you'll be okay to travel?" Like a dutiful husband. Rachel didn't even look up from her phone. I booked a room in the same hotel where I worked. Staff gave me the employee rate without asking questions. I spent the first 24 hours curled up in a ball, crying, staring at the ceiling. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just kept seeing that message. Your skin still tastes like red wine. Eventually, I pulled myself together and started gathering evidence. I took screenshots of the messages, exported the chat from the iPad, and saved copies to a cloud folder only I could access. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew that no one would believe me otherwise. Rachel was too perfect, too clever. She knew how to manipulate the narrative. When I finally returned home on Monday, nothing had changed. But I had. I stopped pretending. Became ice. I started sleeping in the guest room and told Daniel I had a pulled muscle and needed space to stretch and sleep comfortably. He looked confused but didn't push. Rachel raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. I avoided being alone with either of them. When I couldn't avoid it, I made it uncomfortable. I stopped laughing at Daniel's jokes. I stopped covering for Rachel's laziness. I started closing doors, literally and figuratively. Then, 3 days later, the confrontation finally came, and I didn't initiate it. Rachel cornered me in the kitchen. She said, "You've been weird since your trip. What's going on?" I stared at her, waiting. She shifted uncomfortably. "You know, if something's bothering you, you can talk to me." The irony made me dizzy. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're right. I've been weird. Probably because I found out my sister is screwing my husband." Her face went pale, then red, then blank, like someone had pulled her plug and rebooted her expression. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You don't understand." "Don't," I said sharply. "Just don't." She took a breath and said, "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to. We were drunk and—" "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "I read everything. This wasn't a mistake. This was a full-blown affair." That's when her demeanor shifted. The tears came, not from guilt but from fear. "I didn't want to fall in love with him," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "Love," I repeated. "You think this is love?" She nodded slowly, and then said the line that burned itself into my brain. "I think he might leave you for me. I think he might leave you for me." That sentence echoed in my ears like a gunshot. I was too stunned to speak. Not because I believed her, but because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She did. She believed he would leave me. That what they had wasn't just lust or boredom. That he would burn down our family for her. For my sister. I walked away without saying another word. I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I was beyond that. What I felt was something colder. Resolve. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I asked Daniel if we could talk. He looked up from the TV, a little surprised, and followed me into the kitchen. I didn't want Emma to hear anything. Not yet. I sat across from him and said, "How long have you been sleeping with Rachel?" He blinked. The pause was short but damning. "Wow, what are you talking about?" he said too fast. "I know. I've seen the messages. I've seen the photos. I know everything." He went pale. Then his face twisted into something unfamiliar. An ugly, cornered version of the man I married. "Okay," he said after a long silence. "Okay. I messed up." "Messed up," said. "You messed up. She came on to me," he said quickly, like it would make a difference. "She was persistent. I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't know how to say no." "Yes. You didn't know how to not take off your clothes." He looked down at the floor. Kept going. "You slept with my sister under my roof. While our daughter was upstairs. while I was trusting both of you." He whispered, "It wasn't about you." That hurt more than I expected. I don't even know what I wanted him to say, but that wasn't it. "So you just, what? Fell into her by accident?" "For weeks. Months." He looked at me then, something sad and pathetic in his eyes. "I was lonely." I almost laughed. "You were lonely," I repeated. "So your solution was to sleep with my sister." He didn't respond. "I want you out," I said, my voice steady. "Tonight." His eyes widened. "You're kicking me out?" "Yes," I said. "You made your choice." "What about Emma? What about her?" Snap. "You should have thought about Emma before you decided to blow up her family." Daniel looked like he might argue, but then he did something unexpected. He nodded. He went upstairs, packed a bag, and left without another word. Rachel came downstairs 20 minutes later, barefoot, in leggings and a sweatshirt, pretending to look surprised. "Where's Daniel going?" I stared at her blank. "You know exactly where he's going." She looked shaken for the first time. "You kicked him out?" she asked. "No," I said. "He chose to leave when he chose you." She looked like she wanted to cry again. But this time I didn't care. "I want you out too," I added. Her face snapped up. "You're kicking me out?" "Yes. But I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." She scoffed. "You're being insane." I laughed just once. "You're lucky you're not being thrown through a window." She didn't move. She just stood there, mouth open, shocked that her manipulation wasn't working. "You have until the end of the week," I said. "Then I never want to see you again." Rachel left 3 days later. My mom picked her up. Apparently she told her a very different version of the story, one where I had emotionally abandoned Daniel and Rachel had accidentally fallen in love. My mom called me and screamed at me over the phone. Hung up. That's when I realized. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because Rachel didn't just sleep with my husband. She was going to try to steal my family. After Rachel left, the silence in the house was unbearable. Emma kept asking where her daddy was. I told her he had to stay somewhere else for work, and that we'd see him soon. It wasn't a lie, not entirely. He was somewhere else and I would see him soon. In court probably. I didn't want to drag her into the mess. Not yet. Not until I had some kind of plan. But she was smart. Too smart. She noticed how my voice cracked when I spoke. How I looked tired all the time. How the bedtime stories were rushed. How the kisses on the forehead lasted just a little too long, like I was afraid she'd disappear too. I took a week off work. I needed space to grieve, to process, to breathe. That's when the messages started. First from my mom. "I think you're overreacting. Rachel made a mistake. People make mistakes." Then from my aunt. "Family is everything. Don't let this tear you apart." And the worst one, from Rachel herself. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just couldn't help how I felt." She ended it with a heart emoji. Blocked her. What shocked me most was how quickly my own family turned against me. Not all of them. My cousin Lydia called me and said she was absolutely disgusted, but most others seemed to think I was being dramatic. That I should forgive and move on. But how do you forgive someone who moved into your home, shared meals with your child, laughed with your husband, and then slept with him behind your back? It wasn't just betrayal, it was invasion. Rachel took up space in my life and poisoned it from the inside out. One night, about 2 weeks after Daniel left, he showed up at my door. No warning. No text. Just showed up holding a paper bag and wearing his old hoodie like it meant something. I didn't let him in. "I just wanted to see you," he said. "You saw plenty of me while you were cheating," I replied. He winced like that hurt him. "But I miss Emma," he said. "Can I at least see her?" I hesitated. I didn't want to use Emma as a pawn, but I also didn't want her confused. I asked him to wait while I got her. She lit up when she saw him. Ran into his arms. I watched from the doorway as he held her and whispered something in her ear. I wanted to cry but I didn't. I just watched. After about 15 minutes, I called her back inside and told him that if he wanted time with her, we'd need to figure out a schedule. Through lawyers. That's when his mask cracked. "You're not seriously going to make this legal," he said, his voice sharpening. "Did you think you could just come and go whenever you wanted?" He stepped closer. "This doesn't have to get ugly." I didn't flinch. "You already made it ugly." He left without another word. 2 days later I got served. Daniel was filing for partial custody, and in his paperwork, he mentioned that I had become emotionally unstable and had alienated him from our daughter. I was stunned, but it got worse. Attached to the documents was a sworn statement from Rachel, saying I had a pattern of emotional manipulation, that I undermined Daniel's parenting, and that my anger issues made the home environment toxic. I nearly threw up. She wasn't just helping him. She was trying to erase me. I didn't cry when I read Rachel's statement. I didn't scream or break things. I just sat there in my kitchen, staring at the pages, feeling something shift inside me. It was the moment I stopped mourning what I lost and started preparing to burn everything they built together. I called a lawyer the next morning. Not just any lawyer. A family attorney I knew through a friend who had gone through a hellish custody battle and won. Her name was Cassandra, and she was exactly the kind of person you want on your side when the other side plays dirty. Calm, strategic, and lethal with her words. When I told her about Rachel's statement, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Interesting move. Completely idiotic, but interesting." We got to work immediately. I handed over everything I'd gathered. The exported chat logs, the photos, the voice messages, the timestamps, even a couple of screenshots showing Rachel sending Emma selfies saying she missed her niece so much, while sleeping with her father behind my back. Cassandra said it was more than enough to build a case of character assassination and emotional manipulation. "I'm not just going to defend your parenting," she told me. "I'm going to eviscerate theirs." In the meantime, I started documenting everything. When Daniel called, I recorded the conversation. When Emma mentioned something about Daddy and Auntie Rachel's apartment, I wrote it down in a log. I even pulled the security camera footage from our doorbell camera and synced it to a timeline of their messages. The overlap was brutal and undeniable. Then something unexpected happened. I got a message from someone I hadn't talked to in years, Rachel's ex, Miguel. He'd seen Rachel's Instagram stories. Photos of her and Daniel sipping wine on a balcony, laughing at some rooftop bar, pretending they were in some kind of Netflix romance. He messaged me out of the blue with a simple, "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this." We ended up talking for hours. Turns out Rachel had cheated on him too. More than once. One of those times. With his cousin. He told me how she lied, manipulated, turned their mutual friends against him, and played the victim when he finally left. "She doesn't love people," he said. "She uses them." I asked if he'd be willing to provide a statement. He agreed. By the time our preliminary custody hearing came around, I was ready. Daniel walked in wearing his nicest sweater and pretending to be the picture of fatherhood. Rachel sat behind him, smiling politely in her faux professional blazer like she wasn't the reason we were even in that courtroom. But then Cassandra started speaking. She laid it out cleanly, professionally, but with the precision of a surgeon. A timeline of deceit, betrayal, and manipulation. She presented the chat logs, the photos, the timeline overlap, the emotional impact on Emma. She brought up Rachel's sworn statement and questioned its legitimacy, citing her conflict of interest and personal bias as a direct participant in the affair. When Cassandra played a voice message where Rachel giggled and said to Daniel, "It's kind of hot sneaking around her house, don't you think?" The judge visibly flinched. Daniel looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Rachel just stared straight ahead, frozen. After the hearing, Daniel approached me in the hallway and said, "You didn't have to humiliate me." I looked him in the eye and said, "You did that yourself." Then I turned to Rachel and added, "And you, next time you want to destroy someone's life, maybe don't leave a digital trail of every filthy lie." She didn't respond. For once, she had nothing to say. But I knew this wasn't the end. Because people like Rachel don't just disappear. They regroup. It had been 2 weeks since the court hearing. Daniel's request for expanded custody had been denied, for now. The judge ordered a full family assessment, including psychological evaluations, supervised visits, and a formal review of Emma's environment. The court was taking my claims seriously. Rachel vanished from social media. Her once constant stream of aesthetic photos and vague inspirational quotes dried up overnight. I expected her to lie low, regroup, and come back swinging with some sob story about how jealousy tore us apart. But she surprised me. She showed up at my house. It was a Sunday morning. Emma was at my parents'. Yes, even they had finally turned on Rachel after seeing some of the court documents. I was sipping coffee in my robe when the doorbell rang. And there she was. No makeup, hair in a bun, sweatpants, no filter, no performance. She looked small. I should have slammed the door in her face. But I didn't. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me and crossed my arms. "What do you want?" I asked. "I came to apologize," she said. I laughed once, bitterly. "That's not what this is. This is damage control." She winced. "I deserve that. I know I do." I didn't speak. I wasn't going to make this easier for her. "I thought I loved him," she said, eyes down. I don't know what I thought. That it would mean something. That I would matter more. "And do you?" I asked. "Matter more?" She shook her head. "No. He's cold now. Different. Like once the thrill was gone. He didn't even want me anymore. He said I ruined his life." I raised my eyebrows. "And did you?" She nodded slowly. "I did." There was silence between us. A long, stretching silence. Then she looked up and said, "I'm leaving. Going back to Miami. I wanted to say I'm sorry before I go." I searched her face for a lie. For manipulation. But for once I saw something real. Something raw. "Your apology doesn't fix anything," I said. "But I accept it. For my sake. Not yours." She nodded again. No protest. No tears. "Goodbye, Rachel." She walked down the steps and didn't look back. And just like that she was gone. Over the next few months, things slowly started to rebuild. Daniel still had supervised visits with Emma, but he had moved out of state for a new job and didn't fight me when I proposed full custody with visitation rights during holidays. Maybe he was too ashamed. Or maybe he realized what he had lost. Rachel kept her word and left town. We haven't spoken since. I started therapy. Emma did too. I learned how to sleep again. How to smile. How to breathe without checking for lies in the corners of my home. One night, after Emma fell asleep, I sat in my living room and reread Rachel's last message. The one with the heart emoji. I deleted it. Then I deleted the entire thread. Because some stories don't deserve to be archived. They deserve to end.